So good afternoon and welcome. Thank you all for coming along to this panel, and thank you to our guests from AECOM for coming today. So the theme of this panel will be to look at graduate skills, and the report for particularly looking at infrastructure companies has just been released from AECOM. My name's John Mitchell. I'm the Vice Dean for Education in the UCL Faculty of Engineering here, and I'll allow our panel to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Katherine Britton. I am a technical director for AECOM, and I work in the aviation team. So I help clients to develop airports in every sense that might take. So everything from the airports, the airport themselves, to the systems and the communities that those airports exist in, and all the multidisciplinary aspects of airports. I'm responsible for design.
Good afternoon, I am Diana Sanchez. I am a geotechnical engineer in AECOM. I work for the ground engineering and environmental team. So we do the assessment of the ground, of the soil, before anything is built above it.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Victoria Smith. I'm a recent graduate at AECOM. I started last year after I graduated in July. I'm part of the Strategic Planning and Advisory team within Transportation within AECOM. I actually studied geography at university, so I'm here today to give a perspective what it's like working with engineers and how interdisciplinary is really good for connecting different teams.
Hi, I'm Katherine Llewellyn. I'm Media Relations Executive at AECOM, and one of my biggest passions is promoting the profession to the wider world, particularly diversity.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to start, thinking of the teams you work in and the current environment, what do you see are the key attributes and skills of the engineers that you look for, or that you think that you use in your day-to-day experience? Yeah.
Well, I think that these are a set of skills, to be fair, these technical and also social skills. Because I think that, for example, in my field, you have to have a very strong analytical skills, but with potential to forecast situations before they become a problem, with ability to communicate to a diverse audience. And also we are starting to consider like a very strong skill that the engineers have a vision in environment, how to maintain the environment.
I think in terms of the skills that we look for, it's increasingly becoming less about just the technical skills. We are looking for well-rounded, not only engineers but future leaders. I think engineers have a gift, which is to be able to see the world in a different way, and that really is a gift. It's a privilege, and I think as we watch our new and emerging engineering talent engage with some of the world's most complex problems, there is an expectation that a strong technical grounding would act as a base, and then upon that we would grow all the other attributes that we would seek to develop: the communication skills, the ability to have a broad outlook on the impacts of our developments on the world, and also the ability to be bold, the ability to not sit within your comfort zone and embrace things as they've always been, but the ability to be bold and to strive to improve things, to take that technical knowledge that you've gained during your studies and to really push it, and to push the people around you and not be scared to do so. If you've got ideas, we want to benefit from that.
Is there anything you...
I think particularly working with engineers on a daily basis, coming from a geography background, my degree was much emphasised on how we can change society for the better to become more an inclusive society. And I think definitely since starting my role as a graduate consultant at AECOM, I've pretty much from my first day, I've been involved with working with engineers, with mathematicians, with scientists to come up with really sustainable solutions to everyday problems, particularly within transportation. but I think it's just going from graduating to then having this impact straight away is really something that's really exciting.
I guess, Lena, you mentioned sort of promoting engineering, and we've mentioned the sort of societal benefits of engineering. Have you seen that as a shift, potentially, that actually graduates coming through are more attuned to the needs, or the image of engineering needs is changing?
Yeah, I think so. I think the image, we were talking about this earlier, about how it seriously needs to change, because I think a lot of people think about engineering and they imagine hard hats and muddy boots, and it's just so different to how it actually is. We work in we've got some beautiful offices that we work in, and it's such an inspiring place to work. And I mean, at the moment, some of the speed that technology is changing is fascinating. I've worked for AECOM for 5 years, and more recently we're talking about autonomous vehicles and virtual reality, and actually seeing that technology is so exciting. And I think what you were saying about things that engineers need to be, I think being adaptable is so important, because even in 5 years, just seeing the speed of how it's changing shows how people need to change in the future. But I think what we need to do is project that image to the outside world a lot more. Obviously we speak to the trade press quite a lot, but they know how exciting engineering is. But I think we need to get out to the wider world and talk to, appeal to the national press much more.
I think, sorry, could you repeat the question?
I guess we're talking about how the image of engineering might be changing, and particularly graduates coming in, seeing the societal benefits of engineering more over just the sort of dealing with widgets and that sort of thing.
Thank you. I think graduates and certainly younger people within the industry are very attuned to the need for, we refer to it as a social license to operate. The idea that it isn't acceptable anymore to just go out and enforce your solution onto a society or onto a particular community. That is not acceptable anymore. The idea now, about enforcing your solution where it may not be appreciated, that's outdated and outmoded, and rightly so. Nowadays we talk much more about engagement, engaging with local communities, engaging with those who are seeking to benefit from our solutions, and that engagement process is part of the design process for whatever product, process or technology that you're trying to engage with in terms of providing a solution. And that's really important, because what's very important is that often some of the most innovative solutions come from the engagement with those who are at the coalface with the problem. And often the engagement and the taking seriously of the people who are engaging with that problem day in, day out, that's where part of our inspiration should be drawn from. It's then our responsibility as engineers to take that inspiration and to grow it into something that we can add a technical basis to, and we can really turn it into something that community can own, and that they can really have pride in the fact that they were part of that solution. So this all links into ethics and this social license to operate, environment and sustainability, and I think that's something that's changed in my career.
So, and I think that's very interesting, because with the IEP here, we're trying to bring in that actually students engage with users and think about users' perspective much more, which is not something that has traditionally been in many engineering degrees. So I guess with that or other things in mind, do you think there is a skills gap of the students coming through that you see you need to develop? It's interesting you say, coming from a non-engineering background, you perhaps emphasise different parts of the degree to maybe how engineers have been trained. But do you think there is something that needs to be upskilled in the engineering graduates we see these days?
I think particularly from working also with engineering graduates, we do have very different backgrounds in terms of, obviously I lack the technical knowledge that you do gain from an engineering degree, but then I also benefit from a different way of being taught. And I think particularly with the engineers that I work with, they are very logical, they are very analytical. And I think it is very beneficial to then be exposed to, and also to have an impact on and an experience of working with other people, with working on real life projects, because I think once you see the impact that you're having, or you know that you're having an impact, it really inspires you to want to make the lives of the people you're working on the projects for better. And I definitely think that is something that is really inspiring.
Yeah, I think that in engineering we don't sell ourselves properly. We have that problem because, for example, we build amazing things like bridges. But we just say, yes, I just did a bridge. But what's the benefit of that? What's the benefit for the community? What is it's improving, is developing, is something. So I think we have that problem from when we start studying. So.
I think one of the things we pick up in our AECOM Future of Infrastructure report is the need for to embrace diverse teams in the future. So part of the way that you address not only the overall, the skills shortage within the industry, but also the requirements of our young people as they take on their careers, is that by having a truly diverse workforce of different people from different backgrounds with different experiences, different gender, ethnicity mix, that if we can have a truly diverse workforce, we can benefit from the diversity of experience that brings. And I think one of the nice things about the programme with the IEP is, as we were talking earlier to some of your students about how the sooner you can get over your suspicion of working alongside other engineering disciplines, you're all a little bit different, you all do things in slightly different ways. But in the workforce, our expectation is that you will be able to work together harmoniously and you'll be able to overcome differences. And if you're doing that as part of your undergraduate training, that can only be applauded, because I think that's very good preparation for the way ahead.
From a comms perspective, how do you think we could communicate that better? Because I think that is a very powerful message to people who might not think about coming into engineering. How?
So AECOM, we do a lot around the kind of big days throughout the year. International Women's Day. Mm-hmm. We try and promote the sector around on those kind of days. At the moment, we've just launched a returners program as well, and it's for people who've been out of work for a few years for any reason, for several reasons. So we're promoting that in the wider world as well, just showing that engineers, it's not just straight from university and then you go into a job. You can change your career several times. You can do an apprenticeship. There's so many different ways people can go into it. So I think it's showing that we need to show the outside world that it's not just a one size fits all.
You mentioned earlier the speed of change and that engaging people, but also I guess that's a threat, new skills, new areas. Where do you see perhaps the things that the graduates of 10 years' time will need to be skilled in to really make a difference in the business?
I think there might have been a traditional approach in the past that you would undertake a period of study and then you would finish your study and you would go on and get a job and then have your career. That is absolutely already outdated now. I think what we have to embrace now, and it's now, it's not even in 10 years' time, that we now have a technical base perhaps, but we have a career-long learning approach. And I think for me that's one of the things that is truly inspiring about working in engineering, is the ability to be able to continue to learn and grow and to be surrounded by amazing technical people who have really truly innovative things to share, and then to be able to apply that in real world situations. There are very few jobs that really offer that, and the tangible benefits that come out at the end, being able to see something in the world that you've contributed to, to me that's a really compelling reason to go into engineering. So I think in terms of graduates in 10 years' time, I think we will only serve to broaden the skills set required in terms of communications, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, all of these different elements. We want adaptable people who are not afraid of the fact that they're going to engage with all of these different faces of engineering. But we won't do it alone. We'll do it as teams, and we'll do it with technical specialists around us, and that's important.
So maybe with that in mind, what do you think has prepared you best for your roles in industry, particularly if you think back to maybe your degrees and your training? What were the things that you really took from that into your roles now?
well, I think, for example, in my case, I did my bachelor in my country, so it's. I think we need to face challenges. We have, and the engineers in the future will need to be prepared, and they will need to have the ability to face big challenges. Because every change will come with different difficulties that we have to overcome. So, in my personal experience, I think that's what is needed for the future as well, because the changes will be really, really big. And I think that we need to work a lot in the social part, because of the mobile phones and these kind of things, we are losing the contact with the people. And we, in engineering, we really need to work closely as a teamwork in interdisciplinary teams.
Yeah, I think drawing on from that, so throughout my degree studying geography, we looked at kind of particularly, obviously, the impacts upon society. And one of my particular modules, we were experiencing kind of accessibility. So it's the accessibility of transportation and the experiences of flying. If you're not able-bodied, that all of a sudden becomes very difficult. And obviously, we are privileged in that we don't know what that is like. So it's gaining that understanding, gaining that insight into actually we do need to become more considerate, and we need to be designing and creating for all people, not just for the few or the many, because we need to access all areas of society. And I think that's one of the biggest things, because the challenges that are going to be facing society is continually changing. And I think we need to, as engineers and as professionals working in engineering consultancies, we do need to respond to those challenges. And I think most recently, I think it was a news article a couple of days ago, and it was how the experience if you're in a wheelchair and you're flying, and on aircraft, and how actually that's really, it can be very indignifying experience, and it's really, people really struggle with this. So it's how to design, aircraft seats so that, say, people in wheelchairs, they can use it, and to make that experience more enjoyable for them. And it's just these challenges which might seem, if you are able-bodied, really insignificant, but to those people who are, do struggle, that is going to completely change their lives. So I think it's just having that reach and just that even understanding and insight into some of the challenges that people face. So it is really, really interesting.
Are there any questions from the floor? Anyone want to ask anything?
Anything that is currently missing, acutely missing for graduates?
If I was to, it's not to say that it's missing, but I think that a skill that is hugely important, given the rate of change in our world at the moment, I think is resilience. Resilience from graduates to be able to acknowledge that whilst a technical training is obviously hugely important and it provides a wonderful base, there are challenges in terms of as you come into the workforce, in the early parts of your career, and you will face setbacks. It's almost inevitable. And the approach with which you respond to those setbacks, I think, is absolutely key in terms of how your career then develops. And I suppose I think it's to consider to yourself, every setback is an opportunity to learn and grow. So whilst it might be easy to perhaps be a little on the defensive side, if you've made a mistake or something hasn't worked out quite as you expected, the really strong candidates that go on to do the most growth are those that embrace that, and they really take that as a learning experience. And I think that is something, resilience is the one that I would call out at the moment.
There's a question?
You mentioned that there was a future of infrastructure report. Would that be available here?
Yeah, we can certainly share the link to it later, so you can download it.
Yeah, the Future of Infrastructure report, it's a report that's been compiled by AECOM, and we sought opinion from all around the world, from people who provide infrastructure, who design infrastructure, who finance infrastructure, and it also has a special section on the future skills requirement of engineers. It's kind of it takes a huge array of opinions and it compiles it into a very, I mean, there's a summary report that goes with it as well, but it's a powerful view of the future of infrastructure and, yeah, hopefully of interest.
I think one thing particularly in there is a call for something different in engineering education, and we've picked up on some of the themes here. So, and I just wanted to pick up again on, things that have kept coming back is teamwork, communication skills, these being really key things. I wonder if you could give a sort of an impression of, how much they fit into the life of an engineer. So I think, some of our graduates going through think they're going to be head down technical skills day in, day out.
Yeah.
And is that the reality?
Not necessarily. Oh, no. No, I mean, I can give you an opinion from, my area of work. So I work in aviation design, and I typically lead large airport projects which are truly multidisciplinary. So on any project I could be, we could have a team of tens if not hundreds of people and contributing to all the different aspects that you might consider at an airport. So it's not just airport infrastructure and aircraft stands and runways and terminal buildings, it's fire training grounds, it's snow bases, it's highways, it's rail, it's the community aspects of the environmental mitigation and the environmental care that you need to incorporate. It's everything from geotechnical engineering to structural engineering. There's the electronics of how baggage systems work and how systems within the terminals work. There's wayfinding and there's the public transport systems that go alongside. All of these different elements, it's hugely complex. And these bring together teams of specialists. Those teams of specialists need to not only be absolutely, experts in their own technical right, but they need to be able to integrate with all the other people in the team in a way that is coordinated, logical, and that builds on the project's success. And often one of the hardest things is to bring people together in order to benefit from the team expertise as a whole, which is why all this, all these communication skills and the ability to be able to negotiate with others and all of these things are really important in terms of you have to see and you have to hold the project success at the heart of what you're doing, and everything else must just feed up into that project success.
I think also following on from that comment as well, all the, there could be these huge infrastructure projects, huge rail projects and roads projects, and the thing that a lot of people find most interesting is sometimes often from the outside world, the environment aspect. So it's the kind of finding really rare bats or rehoming badgers and things like that. And I think that actually is a really important part of the projects because it brings it alive to the people who might not understand what engineering is. And I think that's a great tool to promote the profession as well.
Yes, I think that we need to be able to cross the boundaries in order to understand the other points of view. To compare and to contrast concepts to work out for the success of a project.
I think particularly it's not just communications within your teams when you are coming up with solutions, it's also the interaction that you have with clients. Very early on I experienced client consultations, client workshops, and actually for you to be able to communicate or for you to understand their ideas, kind of what they want to achieve is something that's really important. You need to be able to communicate with them to have these discussions. Sometimes, we can't always understand what the client wants, so we have to explain to them that sometimes it's not always achievable. But that's definitely something that is really important. So to create these solutions that are going to meet the needs of the client, communication is definitely, and also teamwork are two of the most important skills to have to be able to do that.
It's interesting because that's about communicating it, but I guess one of the things we've not touched on, and yet certainly when we engage with school children, particularly it fascinates them that this is part of engineering, is the idea of it being a creative subject and not just about maths and physics. I'd be interested for you to say if there's thoughts on how you see creativity as part of that role as an engineer.
I think that to come up with solutions, you have to be creative. Because, for example, in my subject, it's not tangible. I mean, you cannot see the soil. You have to be creative. You have to imagine things and to understand how it works along with other. For example, with the structural team, we work together almost the whole time. So we need to understand each other, but we need to be. You need to be creative to understand what they are trying to tell you, to say, or to create.
Yeah, it's interesting. AECOM released an advertisement a few years ago, which really focused on the tagline was turning imagination into reality, and they follow people kind of sketching out things on the back of napkins or coming up with ideas when you perhaps wouldn't expect it. And that is one of the most compelling parts of being an engineer, is that an idea, something in your imagination, you can have an idea in the most unexpected time or place, and yet as an engineer you have the capacity to turn that into a reality. And that is where the creativity side of engineering is really important. I go into schools and I talk to children about engineering, and one of the things that we talk about is who likes Minecraft, who likes to draw on their computer screens, and of course the wave of hands go up, and that's part of engineering, that creativity side, that's absolutely integral to what we do.
How might we communicate that? I don't know.
We often, because a lot of our engineers at AECOM do really great work going into schools, and a lot of what they do is so they'll play games where they use like straws and marshmallows and things like that to make, to encourage children to design things, and also Lego is such a great tool as well. And so I think that's something that the press is interested in. I mean, there was that recent program about Lego and children learning, how to design different things, and one of our engineers was in that program, and that's just great that we have role models like that. And I think that's important. That I think it's actually our responsibility to get out there and do as much as we can of that sort of thing, and going into schools and opening the eyes of young people, and to also show young people that there's not stereotypes at that age. There was a lady at AECOM. She's actually retired now, but she was an engineer, and her son. She said to him, "Do you want to be an engineer when you grow up?" And he went, "Oh, that's a woman's job, And it's actually, as we know, there's actually a bit of a gender imbalance, especially in sectors such as rail. So I think it's going into schools, and not just at secondary schools, from a very young age is so important. And I think also us showing the outside world that that's happening as much as possible is really important.
So I guess to wrap up, and people. Oh, sorry, Abel, did you have?
Okay, just okay. What I wanted to ask was this issue regarding gender. Like, currently we have more males in engineering than women, but we are also coming to a situation where, like, people like you, ladies like you, other women might start looking at you and say, okay, this is a special breed of women. It's not like us. How are you breaking that sort of nuanced barrier between yourselves and other, and like the girls in college, in high school, in primary school?
We do actually. We have some engineers at AECOM who actually make it their particular aim to go into schools that might be in disadvantaged areas. And I think we've got some really inspiring people, and I think that's actually a huge part of our roles. I'm obviously not an engineer, but for engineers, I think that they should do that, definitely, and to actually go into all different schools. Because what I found when I've spoken to quite a lot of we have a lot of events at AECOM where we're promoting diversity, and a lot of people say that a lot of women at work seem to have gone to all girls schools, or kind of come from backgrounds where they were really encouraged. So I think you're really right there, that it's if you've not had that encouragement or inspiration, it's really hard to consider it. So I think it's the role of engineers to actually get out there and to encourage young people.
I think as engineers, we have to acknowledge that 50% of the globe is female. And therefore, if we have a a gender imbalance in those providing engineering solutions for that population, then those solutions will not appropriately reflect the audience that are making use of those solutions, be they mechanical, electrical, civil, whatever the engineering solution. And I think at AECOM we don't see, female engineers aren't seen as anything different. There may be still an imbalance, but I think we're just engineers doing our job, and it's important that men and women are encouraged to thrive and encouraged to excel in their careers. And I hope that over the course of my career this won't be a discussion point anymore. It certainly isn't as much of a discussion point as it was at the start of my career. I see far more women, and I work with far more women. The difference now is that when you have well-balanced teams, and I'm not just talking gender, I'm talking in all inclusivity, you make different decisions. Diverse teams do things differently. They arrive at different outcomes, and that is for the benefit of all of society, not just for those teams. So I think we must all play our part in encouraging inclusivity and ousting any sort of prejudice in the sector.
Conscious of time, I think we'll wrap up, but I just wanted to ask one short question to conclude to each of you. We've talked about some of the changing in skills and some of the important skills. Is there one thing you would advise our graduates to develop to help them for their transition and their time into industry while they're with us and while they're at university?
I would encourage you to be bold. I would encourage you to think big. Engineers will solve some of the world's most significant challenges in your career. And if you can be bold enough to step out and embrace that challenge, well then good for you, because you'll have an awesome career. So that would be mine.
I would recommend the students here take advantage of the program that you have, because I consider it's amazing. It's not very easy, and it's not available in every university to have a contact with people from different backgrounds and studying different careers. So that really is an advantage when you go to industry, because you show up when you are in an interview.
A very similar point, I would say just take every opportunity that comes your way, or if you don't have any opportunities, find those opportunities, because I think it will really benefit you when you turn up so your first day of work and you can kind of know what to expect. I think it's really important to discover your resilience that you have and your how you can adapt to the workforce. I think it's something that will benefit you massively.
I think it's really important to network as much as you can, and lots of the institutions have free networking events that you can go to and just speak to all different people. But also, it sounds quite cheesy, but believing in yourself I think is really important, because you might think that a job that you're applying for sounds like you'd never get it, but if you don't put your name forward, you'll never know. So I think just putting yourself forward, as we were saying about any opportunities, and that can create an exciting career path for you.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for your time. We will circulate links with the report for people to read, and thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.